Right, good evening and welcome to you all. This is East Devon District Council Scrutiny Committee meeting of the 5th of February 2026, and I am your chair this evening, Councillor Mike Goodman. This meeting is being recorded and is live on the Council YouTube channel. There's no fire alarm drills anticipated today. In the event of fire alarm sounding, please leave the building through the nearest fire exit by following the green running man signs above the doors and make your way to the rear of the car park. If anyone needs assistance leaving the building, in the event of emergency evacuation, please let us know. The organiser of the meeting will tell you when it is safe to return. Please make sure your phones are either muted or switched off. All councillors have been sent the agenda for today's meeting, and any members of the public who wish to view the agenda, they can find it on www.eastdevon.gov.uk. We will now start the meeting with the roll call of committee members present, which will include declarations of interest. When you hear your name, please unmute your microphone and confirm you are present. And please state whether you have any declarations of interest in items on the agenda or not. So, Sarah, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Barlow.
Present, no declarations.
Councillor Blakey.
Present and no declarations.
Councillor Jenny Brown. No. Councillor Bruce.
Present and no declarations. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman. No. Councillor Davey.
Present, no declarations.
Councillor Fernley.
Present, no declarations.
Thank you. Councillor Goodman.
Present and no declarations of interests.
Thank you. Councillor Anne Hall.
Present and no declarations, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Matt Hall.
Apologies sent.
Thank you. Councillor Johns.
Present, no declarations, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Levine.
Present. I do not never met Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, but I did go to uni with Peter Mandelson.
Okay, thank you. Moving on. Councillor McKinder. Thank you. And Chair, the meeting is quorate.
Thank you.
One query. I'm chair of East Devon Beekeepers. I know this is about insects and pesticides. Is that a relative? No.
Okay, does any councillor, no, so are there any councillors in the meeting outside this committee who wish to declare an interest in any of the agenda items? No? Okay. The minutes of the previous meeting were held on the 12th of January 2026, pages 3 to 6 of your report. Does any councillor have any comments on the minutes of the previous meeting, or are you happy for me to sign them? Happy for me to sign them? Good, thank you. Agenda item 2, apologies. We've got apologies from Bethany Collins and Joe Wibley. Are there any others? Matt Hall. Right, okay. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Well, that's been dealt with. Agenda item 4, public speaking. We have one person who is going to speak to us. It's Councillor John Loudon. John.
That didn't go well, did it? Thank you. Thank you. Within the report at page 9, it states in section 1, the introduction, quote, responses were low, with only Exmouth, Exe-Valley and Sidmouth ward members providing feedback. Sidmouth and Exe-Valley also included feedback from 3 other councillors combined. The responses can be seen in the links to background information section above. It also says, in contrast, Sidmouth Town Council submitted a report containing images of weed causing damage along footpaths, etc., and advocated the reversal of the ban. It also then links to background information, quote, a growing problem, version 2 STC, brackets, from Sidmouth Town Council. I've been a member of Sidmouth Town Council for almost 7 years, and according to the clerk, the Town Council's position on the use of glyphosate, you know what I mean, is that it follows the advice of EDDC on this and other similar matters. This position remains unaltered. I am concerned that the report as presented to the committee might lead the committee's member to believe that Sidmouth Town Council submitted a report for this review and that it, quote, advocated the reversal of the ban. To be clear, quote, Sidmouth Council has not submitted a report and Sidmouth Town Council has not, quote, advocated the reversal of the ban on glyphosate. I'm concerned that providing a link to this report and stating that it is, quote, from Sidmouth Town Council is misleading, as the Town Council has not submitted this, and it is not an official Town Council document. Rather, a Sidmouth Town councillor drafted and submitted the report for submission to this committee as a personal set of observations. Having spoken to the author of the document, they have agreed that I can advise you that in response to the way this document has been communicated within the report, they have authorised me to say, and I quote, I was asked to submit my personal observations. I sent copies to Councillor Ian Barlow and Councillor Mike Goodman as my local EDDC councillor and Mike at head of scrutiny. If you look carefully at the top in the introduction, I make a clear statement. I am submitting this material as an independent person. These are my opinions based on an intimate study of the growing problem I have witnessed in the Sid Valley. He also says, also for reasons of full disclosure, at the bottom, I write, I'm Vice Chair of the Town Council and a member of the Conservative Party. I am personally not happy at having my contribution labelled as Sidmouth Town Council, and when I saw that, I immediately told the Town Council Chair of my unhappiness that this had happened. End of quote. My last sentence, Chair. I am most concerned that forever, anyone accessing and reading this report will read these significant and misleading inaccuracies relating to Sidmouth Town Council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think what we're saying is that was a report that Councillor Paul Dodds did, and it should not be taken that it represents Sidmouth Town Council. And it's exactly the same as someone else in this report made a personal recommendation that, in their view, it should be kept. It shouldn't be banned. This is what Paul's views were, and that's fine to be noted. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The point is that it keeps saying that Sidmouth Town Council has taken a position, and this is their position. It is not.
Thank you for that. Pardon? Yeah. Yeah. We will, I'm being advised, we will make sure those comments are noted in the minutes of the report.
Sorry to drag on. I have taken the liberty, Chair, of circulating to you, Anita, Andy and Sarah, my comments for your inclusion.
Thank you very much. Okay, so item 5, matters of urgency. There are none. Confidential items, there are none. Item 7, decisions made by Cabinet, including portfolio orders called in by members for scrutiny in accordance with the overview and scrutiny procedure rules. There are none. So I'm going to move on to the first main item of the meeting, which is agenda item 8. And I'm going to call Paul Fairley and Julia Woodbridge to present the report, pages 7 to 15 of your main report.
Good evening, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yes, had to note with regards to the Sidmouth Town Council reference there, it was a submission, as we said, by Councillor Ian Barlow. So that's purely from Ian Barlow, and it was an attached report included within those comments. So yeah, that's kind of something I'd added to note at the end there. And also just to confirm, that there isn't a council-approved policy around glyphosate. So following the ban, Paul Feely created a weed treatment plan, which has been used to inform this report. So as you're aware, the council banned glyphosate in 2022, and as per the scoping document, we've been asked to review the impact of that within street scene and the work that we're doing, but also ask for feedback so we can find out input from all of the councillors. Sarah very kindly emailed all of the councillors with a list of questions set out on page 2 under number 1, introduction, asking for details of particular problem areas, asking for details of location and whether town and parishes had received any complaints from residents. So overall, the response was very low, which is actually really positive because it obviously clearly shows that there aren't huge issues around that within areas that we maintain, which I take as a real positive. But clearly there are still some locations, but those highlighted were predominantly, I think, if not all, Devon County areas. So just to pick up on that. But then the report leads into the trials of glyphosate alternatives, the first being vinegar, which has had varying levels of success, but we can go into the detail of that a bit later. Then also hot foam, which we've been using for some time, which we started using pre-me. Again, that's had mixed results and are not as successful as we would have liked. So we've been quite honest and transparent about, you know, the alternatives we've used, and we've summarised that in the conclusion for each trial. I think then, yeah, we've got quite a lot of information in there, and I suspect there'll be lots of questions around this report. So happy to take those really, based on what you've read and our recommendations moving forward.
Before we open up, just one question I would like to ask. In the proposed review, the last paragraph of the proposed review said, councils in the UK, which is true, have started to review their policy. It is in my view, because I wrote this, time that the EDC reviews its policy and any changes should be considered based on current facts. I don't think, reading this report, it covers that point. And I think I'll be saying at the end, I think we still need to do that work. When we do it, we can discuss it, but I don't think that comes across in this report. What it is a very factual report about what we're doing, and I think we're going to go on to say that the biggest problem is not EDC with weeds, it's the higher authority. Is that fair, Julie?
Yeah, that's fair. Again, we wanted this report to kind of focus on what we've been doing and get current sort of recent feedback and update on where we are kind of now and, you know, how we're moving forward in the future. But I totally take your point. And I think at the moment, obviously, there is no formal policy as such at all. So that could be something that could be looked at in the future. And yeah, lots of councils, as you say, are reviewing that.
Thank you. Would you like us now to go outside the committee and then inside the committee asking questions rather than ask our two officers to say any more? And they'll be quite happy to present some more, but it is a very detailed report and I'm sure you've got questions. Can I suggest, if you're happy, that we go straight into questions? So can I go outside? Anybody? Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Chair. I've not used any of these sprays on my farm for over 40 years. We generally cut any weeds like thistles and nettles and things before they seed. And if you can keep on top of them, then there's not really a problem. But many years ago at Clumpton, Network Rail, or might have been British Railways before, they had special trains that would spray the railway bank, and they would do about 1.5 meters up to the track bed, and that worked very well for several years. But at Clumpton, they went spraying when it was windy, and the sprays blew right into people's gardens, and they killed a lot of plants. And it was devastating for those people. But last summer we had a drought, and we had got a very good man in Honiton that does a lot of weeding. He also cleans the toilets for East Devon, and he weeded out the cobblestones. He does it every summer. He weeded the cobblestones, and it was near the end of the drought, and it rained, and within a fortnight or so, all the weeds had come back again. I felt so sorry for him doing all that hard work. But if that could have been sprayed, then you wouldn't have had that problem with them reoccurring. I think if the sprays are used sensibly and people got the right gear on, their gloves and their face masks and waterproof clothing and that, then if they're used sensibly when there's no wind going, then I can't see there's going to be a problem really. It's common sense mostly. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else outside? No, so we'll go inside. Go on. Right.
Thank you, Chair. I found the report most concerning, really. Well, I'll just ask my questions. When did we start using Dicafar? Because we are listed as being a pesticide-free council on the website Pesticide Action Network, which is what we signed up to when we did the glyphosate ban. Why was this trial approved? Why wasn't this trial approved by councillors when the council has declared a nature emergency as well as a climate emergency? And in the table on the last page, you say Dicafar is more environmentally friendly than glyphosate. What evidence do you have to support this? Because it did used to be, or maybe still is, an ingredient in Agent Orange.
Okay, Julia.
Thank you for your comments. With regards to the toxicity, so there's 2 points. The first point is the pesticides and herbicides used. The second point is the toxicity. So with the toxicity of selective weed killers, and Dicafar is the one that I researched a lot because a lot of selective weed killers contain 1 or 2 plant synthetic hormones, but Dicafar contains 4. So that is used and has been used and probably will be continued to be used as a selective weed killer across acres and acres of land, so across sports pitches. So the ban had a proviso of that glyphosate would still be used on giant hogweed or invasive weeds. And when the glyphosate ban came in September 22, it wasn't a pesticide or a herbicide ban. It was a glyphosate ban because the East Devon District Council uses a lot of pesticides and herbicides across 5 football pitches, across 2 rugby pitches and 3 bowling greens and a couple of grass tennis courts. So it's used, pesticides are used quite extensively when you add them up, because pesticides can also cover insecticides and fungicides. So the bowling greens use those quite a lot. So with regards to toxicity, there's 4 ingredients for Dicafar, and they're all organically derived. So one of the ingredients that did have issues in the past was dicamba. but because it was synthesized the industrial treatments were synthesized in a different way. But since then they have, so for example, some of these ingredients, chlorinated phenol was used with chlorine gas, followed by condensation with chloroacetic acid. And that was changed into condensing phenol with chloroacetic acid to then create a phenoxyacetic acid. So if we just look at the 3D ingredients of dicafar, so the first one is called 2,4-dicochlorophen acid, and it's created. It's an organic compound because of its molecular structure. It's based on carbon and hydrogen, so it's an organic compound that is combined with phenol. So the second ingredient is mecacrop P. And mecacrop P.
Chair, sorry to interrupt, but are we listening to a scientist or not? Because if we're not, I don't see the point. It might be interesting for everyone. None of us are scientists. If we are, do we understand this? But if we do, I think at the end.
Thank you. I do have a science background, so I do understand what's going on. And people, when you say organic, people need to know that that's not organic farming. This is organic chemistry, which is entirely different. And when I contacted the Pesticide Action Network, who we spoke to and was mentioned in the paper in 2023, they said if you want to use a pesticide or herbicide, you're better off using glyphosate than you are using dicafar, because dicafar is more harmful. So I'm slightly concerned by what we've got going on here.
I think if I can come in before you carry on, my research said exactly the same. Yeah. So I think the question still is, the decision was made to use the chemical. Why was that decision made with the background that we banned? And I think that was the question that, Paula, you were making.
Yes, so the health and safety officer and street scenes assistant director was involved in kind of orchestrating a very small trial areas to use it on and its effects to counter really troublesome weeds that we've continued to have. So ground elder, and, Alexanders, and lots of weeds which, in some of them in beds which we weren't able to control. So yeah, a small area was designated as a trial, away from the public in a closed area, and was very successful. So the intention is we use dicafar, and everybody else uses it on sports pitches across the world and country. The intention is, if we were to replace the use of dicafar across acres of land, by talking to Catherine Corsley about using biochar as a natural soil additive and ameliorator and feeder. If we were to replace that or minimize that and then use Dicafar as a spot weed treatment, then the reduction in Dicafar use would be great.
I must admit, and I don't know if the rest of the committee, I am very confused at what you're saying. First of all, you said there's a trial that the deputy director agreed, and now you're saying it's used on sports pitches. Is that right? Because if so, why? Because I'm confused. I don't know if anybody else is. Because
it's a selective weed killer.
Yep.
That kills broadleaf weeds and doesn't kill grasses. And it's the standard on pitch maintenance.
I know people want to come in, but what I would say is that isn't the point from the chair. The point is, in the point that Paula said, it's being used now widely. Why has it been used widely when we as a council currently have a ban on it? I think that was the question that Paula asked. I am confused why. So we banned, that was banned, so we use that, even though that is still worse than.
Could I just, Chair, can I just say about glyphosate though, the point of glyphosate is it kills everything green.
Yes.
Whereas what they're talking about, using it on a playing pitch where you want grass, but you don't want broadleaf weeds, thistles and other things.
Yes. Go on.
Could I just ask, were we routinely using Dicafar on sports pitches and the like before this? Because obviously, had we been using glyphosate, as Councillor Barlow said, you'd have a brown sports pitch because it would have killed everything.
Yes, all councils, all managers, overseers of sports pitches or bowling greens, or any kind of high-spec turf, use a selective weed killer.
So I think I understand you saying that before the ban came in for glyphosate, we were using this and we just carried on using it.
And then used it for other things.
My understanding is there were exceptions agreed within the ban, that actually it could be used on specific sites. Is that correct, Paul?
There were exceptions, yes.
Right.
And the pitches were one of those?
Yeah, sports pitches.
Okay. Yes, Anne.
Thank you. My concern, I understand sports pitches are high maintenance. They have always used a weed killer on them to maintain those pitches. I don't think there's any alternative on that, easy alternative. My concern is actually we're using it as a broadleaf weed killer for spot weed killering, not on pitches. Now, the label, does it actually say it can be used as a spot weed killer elsewhere and not on amenity turf? Because everywhere I've looked, that product is purely used for amenity turf. Having been in the retail side of horticulture, if it wasn't on the label, it hasn't been trialled, so you cannot actually use it as a spot weed killer. And that is my main concern, because it says in recommendation 2 to actually be rolled out more widely. I'm sorry, I know why you have to use that product on turf, but to actually push it out to do spot weed killing and if it hasn't been trialled, then the LERAP risk assessment isn't valid. I'm concerned we're going in the wrong direction. And I think, sorry, it's not a question, it's a statement, I think. Or the question will be, does it actually now have had trials on being used as a spot weed killer, not on lawns and amenity turf? Thank you.
It's designed for broadleaf weeds within grasses on overlying soil. So it's a, you know, a minor amendment to use it on beds. But I think it says it's recommended for sports pitches.
Yeah, recommended for sports pitches, but not for brambles. That's a brushwood killer, which is needed and has had all the testing done on it. I'm concerned this is very toxic stuff to be pushed out further into other areas which it's not certified to be used for.
If I could just back that up, what Anne's just said. If you go to the HSE and you look at Dicafar, and there are a couple of variants of Dicafar with Dicafar-like names, the crop that it's listed for is turf or amenity turf. So one of the questions I'd like to know from your professional opinion, does that mean it may only be used on those, or is it that's what we've tested, but you can use it for any other broadleaf weed killing you want? Because that seems to me wrong, and that's not what HSE have tested it for. So I think we'd be on thin ice if we start ad-libbing on where we use it.
Well, I think from my point of view, the answer to that question is no, from council. Look, an informed society never goes backwards, and I will save my statements for later. But I've just got a couple of things to add. Firstly, the report is reasonable, but there are a couple of omissions. One I wonder whether you could answer is that when you do the hot foam spray or any of the processes that you use, is any measurement made of the microbe damage underneath the weeds, the soil? For instance, I understand from a long time ago that things like spiders, which are crucial for fungal development in soils, were specifically named in weed treatments, and if anything harmed them, it was not used at all. And yet I don't see anything in this report that suggests what's going on beneath the weeds when you apply these various, be it vinegar, be it hot foam or whatever. There doesn't seem to be a take-up on what's actually going on underneath, because obviously if you don't know what's going on underneath, you could find that you're creating harm where you may not have needed to.
Yes, thank you. No, it's impossible with the resources to understand what was going on beneath the soil level. So much so that we didn't know whether weeds were killed until they came back, and the vast majority did. So that is a real drawback, one of many of hot foam.
But it's certainly something we can consider for future trials of, you know, alternatives as well.
This is the danger of unintended consequences, Chair.
So there's always the alternative, isn't there? Well, these are the consequences, aren't they? You take a spot weed killer off the market, we say we're not going to use it, but we don't give it any more finance, so we haven't got thousands of people that can go and handpick these things. So then we have a thing that we can spray over tens of acres of grass, and that kills broadleaf weeds. But we're now saying, but we can't spot weed with it because that might be dangerous. But it's all right if we spray it over football pitches and bowling greens and all the rest of it, which would kill more bees than you could possibly imagine if it affects, if it affects bees. This is what it's about. This is what it's about. Again, this isn't, you know, Sidmouth Town Council quite rightly discussed this in the states of the roads. We're trying to fix the roads. Devon County Council can't afford it, they haven't got the money. So we are looking at the state of the roads. And one of the issues with the roads is the weeds coming up. So you weed kill, or you can rake out the weeds, which damages the roads more. So that is the issue that came up. So it wasn't a report from Sidmouth Town Council, as Councillor Loudon has quite pointedly pointed out, as I pointed out when I sent in the report in the first place, that it was a member of Sidmouth Town Council that had put this together. He has a science background and pointed out that our previous one, when we cancelled this, you mentioned the, what is it, the ban against the body that we quote is the Pesticides Action Network. It's a bit like saying to the Vegan Society, is meat good for you? You know, they are against pesticides, quite rightly. Many pesticides, farmers spraying hundreds of thousands of acres of it when they're in flower and things like that, spraying off there. It's devastating, and I don't understand it. However, we are not scientists. We might be scientists, but we are not experts on pesticides and toxicity. I can't imagine. And if you are, I apologise. But even so, the government, right, but the government has proper experts, gold standard experts that they think, and the government allows it to happen. You can sell it in the garden centre, thousands and thousands of litres, from nurseries and places like that around here will sell, that people go out with no idea how to use it, no one reads the instructions, they go out and they spray it on anything they want to kill. We have trained people that are supposed to go out and spray little bits of problems. We used to help Devon County Council. If you look at the original 2019 report where we banned it, it says in there, we used to work with Devon County Council to spray curbs and roadsides that kept your town happier, people are happier, it's neater, they have pride in their town, etc. But we banned it because it's bad, even though we trained people. And yet we allow the public to run willy-nilly with it, the farmers to spray up half the countryside with it, and we are saying that we can't use it. So now we've got these problems. Hogweed, but it's damaging. It's a dangerous plant that hurts people. So they've got to find something to do with it. I don't know how else we're supposed to deal with it. So, you know, wouldn't it be better to say we want to limit what we use to the absolute minimum of whatever chemical it is, whatever chemical. Glyphosate has got more investigated, more knowledge about it than anything else, and is safer than, I've read the same thing, than Dicafar. So it would be better to say you can have 20 litres a year to use sparingly on the plants that matter, rather than try and play with things that we don't understand. We are not scientists, we are not experts, we shouldn't be playing with this, and we should rely, whether you believe there is a, you know, Monsanto and Bayer have got hold of the government and are paying them money to allow it to happen, whatever, all across the world, and the EU is the same. Yeah, I'm sorry, there has to be a limit that what is safer and what is not. We are not killing billions of things. We're not spraying plants with it. We're not spraying flowers with it. We are spraying things that we are finding it difficult to deal with and we don't have the resources to deal with. There is our balance. It's finding a balance. We've done something. The consequences, whatever anyone says, it looks a mess in places and it is causing damage. So it's a balance. And I think you'll find we've gone too far. We don't have to go backwards, but we've gone too far. We need to put the balance right. And by playing with new chemicals, to my way, is not the way of doing it.
Okay, just a quick question. Under the pros and cons of Dicafar, it says on the pros, no access issues for operators, and under the cons, it says no restrictions for operator access. And I'm just wondering why the same statement, as far as I can see, appears in both columns. I'd also like to know if the operators, the people spraying this stuff, need PPE or any kind of protective equipment in order to keep them safe. Sorry, did I say it's on page 14, the last page of the report.
Thank you. That's my mistake, sorry. Yes, so the street team does have quite a few PA1 and PA6 spraying license operatives, and the health and safety officer is doing refresher courses for those, which BTEC, the awarding body, recommend. So, yeah. Yeah, so the no access issues for operators, I should have put in brackets, but it was directly kind of contrasting against hot foam. The hot foam machine, which was on a flatbed van, and there was a lot of access. You couldn't trail the 60-meter hose across the grass, it would burn it. There was lots of areas teams couldn't get into. So yeah, so just to clarify, with regards to the hot foam, this one doesn't have access issues because it's kind of pedestrian.
And the PPE. We obviously need that.
PPE, yes. Yeah, council supplies the PPE, spot checks it, and operatives maintain it, use it, report it when it's yeah, not fit for purpose.
Yeah, just to clarify, that we're not responsible for the roads, the curbs, or the footpaths. That is down to Devon County Council. We might have helped them out years ago, but we haven't got enough money to do what we're supposed to do. So I know a lot of the criticism is the curbs. I go around my village with a hoe every year. No, it's backbreaking work, but I do it. So there's no replacement for physical action like that. But we can't expect our staff to go around all the curbs in the whole district doing that. But just to clarify, we're not responsible for a lot of things that people expect us. We're responsible for. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Gosh, where to start? Yes, hogweed, big issue. There's no doubt about that, and I think nobody here would argue that that needs to be treated because that is a danger to people quite clearly, particularly giant hogweed. But carrying on from your comments, a good mechanic uses the right size spanner rather than an adjustable, and your point is that there hasn't been enough tests done to use this chemical in the way that is being suggested in here. And so I think it's a straightforward no, we can't go forward. You have these tests done by expert people for very good reasons, and if they haven't been done, you just can't go forward. It's too risky, in my view.
Vicky.
Thank you, Chair. Coming back on Jeff's point just now with regards to the roads, pavements, etc., not being anything to do with East Devon District Council, we're all aware of that. However, question 2 states, details as to whether the weeds are causing structural damage, e.g. to hard surfaces, or if not causing damage are unsightly. So you're asking the question and then telling us not to report the pavements, etc., that people are complaining about, which are structures and hard surfaces. The other point I wanted to make is on here, under the hot foam, it specifically states, advantages, weed seeds in the soil are sterilised. Disadvantages, can kill underground bulbs and organisms. So we're aware of that for hot foam, but we don't have that for either the cider, what was it, cider or something? Vinegar, close enough, we're near Somerset. Exactly, similar content. Or the other one that we're discussing in depth. And I think until we know the effect on what's happening underneath the soil, it's very difficult for us to make this decision. We've only got half the information. And I'm not blaming anybody because it may be information that isn't readily available and it's something that we'll find out in due course. But the issue, again, as everybody's pointed out, is we can see what's happening on the surface. I mean, it says in here, in one of the reports, it doesn't affect bees, etc. It doesn't, I don't think it affects them directly. It says here, does not impact the neurology, navigation or behaviour of bees, which mounting evidence against glyphosate points to it being a major cause of pollinator decline. However, it does kill off, if it kills the seeds for flowers and things underneath, there's not going to be any bees if they've got nothing to eat and they've got nothing to pollinate. So I think it's really difficult for us as a council to make a decision without having all of the facts in front of us. Not that I'm blaming anybody for not having those facts, but if they're things that we can't see what's underneath and see what's being damaged, it's very difficult for us to make that decision when we can only see what's on the surface. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter. Thank you, Chair. Sorry if I didn't say anything at the start, but all this conversations reminded me of a video I saw on Facebook of this guy who was going through all details, I mean, about broadleaf plants and the nutrition they put back into the soil. And I'm not sure which plants we're killing off on our lawns and whatever, but if we spent a bit more time reading up on what these broadleaf plants, I mean, if I can dig out the video, I'll see I can send it on to people. But you know, just having grass doesn't actually put the nutrients back into the soil. So I'm just a bit concerned about how much we're spending killing off plants that we actually need in the soil in the first place. Yes, go on.
I haven't said anything yet. One of the advantages, I'm a very reluctant gardener, so I'm a bit worried about, I don't want weeds to grow in the winter because then I have to go out and do something about them. But one of the advantages that I know of glyphosate is it breaks down when it's in contact with the soil. What about dicofar? What is its persistence in the soil? Because that's an important thing. It is a hormonal. It can affect us for all we know. I don't know, I haven't read it that it doesn't. Do we know anything about the persistence of dicofar in the soil?
Thank you. I'm reluctant to go into the science behind it. I mean, just really keeping it very succinct, 3 out of its 4 chemical constituents are organic compounds that are treated with liquid or gas chlorine. Chlorine is an organic compound as well because it's created from chloride, like lightning striking the sea. And then the one of the chemicals, dicamba, the half-life is between 6 and 15.1 days in one of the studies.
Is he finished? Councillor Jeffries, if it was finished.
Thank you. I think I'd like to refer back to Paula's point about the use of the word organic, and that's organic chemistry, not the fact that it's an organic natural compound to start with. So I think if we're starting off on that level of knowledge of what we're talking about in terms of the chemistry and science level, I think we probably haven't got the right information here in front of us. Thank you.
Can I ask a question, Chair? How many litres, do we know how many litres we use of dicofar or previously glyphosate, whatever? How many litres do we use And not for treating of the bowling greens and things, but the actual spot weeding. Are we talking 10 litres, 20 litres, 50 litres? Do we know what we're sort of using at the moment?
Well, we're not using it at the moment, councillor. We used it in a very localised bed, which was overrun with weeds. And we used it to spray hogweed and giant hogweed in Budley Salterton. And that was it. And it was just, I think it was 35 millilitres per, no, sorry, it was 75 millilitres per 10 litre spraying tank, and it was half of that, so between 30 and 40 millilitres so far, and then it was stopped.
And sorry then, so if we were to start using it as you're hoping to use it more, do we have any idea of how many litres we would be using going forward? So, you know, if you're hoping to use it on the beds like you say that you'd like to expand it out, are we talking about 5 litres, 10 litres, 20 litre drum a year? You know, how far does it go and what sort of thing are you expecting to use? Is it going to be 1 litre a year, or are we talking about, because if you look it up, we use hundreds of tonnes a year, thousands of tonnes a year through farming, that sort of thing.
Do you know if Devon use it?
Thank you. There are quite a few selective weed killers on the market. And yes, it's anyone who is managing and maintaining sports pitches will use it.
But we don't know about Devon specifically then.
If Devon, well, I had a meeting with Devon Football Association last week, and they manage a lot of football pitches. So Dicafort are one of its very, very similar selective weed killer alternatives, yes.
I suppose my focus of the question, do you think they're using it as we're using it on spot spraying, so to speak? You may not be able to answer the question if you don't know.
I'm not aware of anyone doing this. The intention was that it was a unique short-term trial, and that was the recommendation on the report, just to use it as a temporary trial.
Look, I'm mindful that we've been going for some time now. It's really, I must admit, the debate has gone a way I wasn't expecting, but this is the beauty of having a committee with different skills that we've certainly got in this committee that I certainly wasn't where we had those scientists in the room. Before I try to sum up and then get your views, are there any other questions or any other statements you want to make? Alistair.
Thank you, Chair. It is a question. I'll leave my conclusions to later. Trial 1. Am I right in thinking this is the car park that's sort of on the opposite side of the road to Seaton Jurassic?
Yes.
Right. I went past there yesterday, and it's a nice shade of green, and it says in the report here in the conclusion that they'll need to be reassessed in the spring. From what I saw, as it's bright green, that doesn't seem to have worked with the weed killer that you've used on it. But again,
No, the hot foam was used across a whole bed, but then the Dicafort was used just on the ground elder, which I'd started to monopolise around one edge. So we didn't use it across the whole bed. It was very, very limited as a trial to see what the results were. And in the spring, I just want to see if any ground elders come back, because it's notoriously difficult to kill.
Thank you, Chair. 2 quick questions. With this product, you have to have respirators, etc., and I believe you have to wash off afterwards as well, wash down. do our staff have facilities suitable to actually do that? And the second one is, have you trialled a pelargonium-based weed killer yet? Because that's quite good. I've used it on mare's tail. You have to persist with it, but it does do it.
Yeah. Secondly, the pelargonium weed killer, that was brought up by Monsanto, which is interesting. And some say it was in anticipation of a ban, because I think 31 countries across the world have banned glyphosate. And the Health and Safety Executive are currently looking at glyphosate because they haven't renewed its 10 or 15-year license, because it doesn't tend to go with the biodiversity net gain and the local nature recovery strategy. So, not as an official trial, no. But it's not systemic, so it does tend to burn the leaves off. It's not translocated through the plant by vascular tissues. It just sits on the leaf. And I think that would be similar to vinegar or acetic acid, where any plants that have got underground storage systems will come back and it will kill anything which is young, newly germinated. But I mean, we are here to accept any recommendations that you offer.
Vicky.
Thank you. Personally, I will struggle to accept so it says a wider scale rollout of Dicypher in selected areas for a trial period will clarify this. I would struggle to agree with that until we know the impact on the soil itself and anything that's living in that soil. You know, we all know how valuable the insects, etc., are, and although they may be a lot lower down the pecking order per se, without them, we've got nothing. So I think until we actually know how it's going to affect the soil underneath, I wouldn't be able to agree to this. I'm sorry. I know you've worked really hard and I appreciate everything you've done, but we need to know how it's going to affect everything underneath it first.
I think that's a great idea, and I think it's something we can take forward to future trials. So yeah,
Right,
thank you.
Paula
Sorry, I've been
then
trying,
Anne afterwards.
been trying to come back for a while.
Sorry.
Yes, I'm with Vicky. I can't support recommendations that that we want to roll this out more widely. I feel we need to lead by example, regardless of how much of the stuff we use. We need to know what we're using and why we're using it. We may have limited resources, but I don't think that's an excuse for killing our environment, however big or small. The research I've done and the expert that I spoke to about Dicypher, it kills, it's toxic to bees, pollinators, it can interfere with their gut microbiome and reduce brood development. It's moderately toxic to birds, most aquatic species and earthworms, as well as it being a possible human carcinogen, an endocrine disruptor, reproductive development toxin, neurotoxin, respiratory tract irritant and eye irritant. So I know you can't use glyphosate on a sports pitch, but how I read the paper, it didn't seem to be majoring on sports pitches. So maybe I've got confused about what we're actually trying to do here and whether this needs to go to overview for actually do a complete look across the council at what we're using where. Because I do believe that we are using glyphosate in the countryside team to kill Japanese knotweed. And I do understand that there are certain structural things where these things might be needed to use. But I think we need to accept that weeds are good. Weeds have flowers and bees like flowers and we don't want to be killing our bees. And a flower bed, just because we've got a flower bed with ground elder in it, I believe, geraniums outcompete ground elder. So why are we not thinking differently? Why are we just going back at the same thing that weed killers are easy? And, I can't support the first two recommendations. Sorry.
Thank you. And is that the last one? And
And
then Bruce
say-
afterwards,
yeah.
Alistair afterwards, and then I'll try to sum up.
And say, I'm quite happy because I'm shocked that we don't actually have a policy, that we actually need it to come to overview for a policy review or getting a policy out there. I can't support certainly recommendation 2 because I am totally against Dicophor being pushed out widely as a spot weed killer. I would say you'll frighten the public with the equipment you have to wear with it. I would say my husband has sprayed nasty stuff with respirators and for customers, and they were frightened. He had to warn them, this is going to be nasty stuff, but it will work. And it was a fair few years ago, and things have changed. But I would say, item 2, no, I would like to see it actually being pushed over to overview to see a policy on this, because I think we could get into sticky ground otherwise. Thank you.
Alistair.
Chair, I think we've all had a good bite at this one, but I thought I'd just finish by sharing an experience of mine. I've been beekeeping now for over 30 years. And when I first started, I could run my queen bees for 5 to 6 years. Now, if I get 3 years out of a queen, I'm doing very well. And what I see from my perspective in the countryside over that period of time is a slow, gradual decline in the efficiency of bee colonies, be it the drones that go out and mate in the spring, that there aren't enough now, that are produced in the hive. There's a whole range of factors that sort of are coming to a sort of a point of crisis. And if you like, I'm probably seeing a sort of slow cascade effect of all the sort of weed killers that we're putting into the environment, be it on cricket pitches or on verges, that impact organisms that we don't often see that much. We tend to sort of see the things. If a bee lands in a flower, you'll see it, but all the other stuff that a honeybee does, most people don't get to see. Even I don't get to see. But what they're being impacted by is making a real world difference, and I get to see the end result of that, where I have colonies which don't perform. For instance, in 23-24, I lost 20% of my bees. In 24-25, I lost 50%. Never had that figure before. And I always do an autopsy to see whether it's lack of food or whatever. And the consistent theme is that the queen is not producing enough bees to go through the winter. So the colony doesn't stay warm enough, and they are no longer viable. Come the spring, they don't have the resources to build. And I can only put that down to farming practices, and one of those things is the overspraying in our countryside. So I'd leave that with you, but again, like you, I can't support the recommendation 2.
Thank you. Thank you. Ollie, did you want to come back, and then I'll finish with Ian, which will then be the last one, I hope.
Okay.
Ollie.
Well, firstly, as Councillor Young pointed out quite early on, most of the complaints seem to be about roads, pavements, and it's not our responsibility. So I wonder why we spent, how long is it? An hour talking about something that's not actually our responsibility. In Exmouth Town Council, we have for years used a thing called a weed dripper, which makes quite an effective job, but it's resource intensive. You need a lot of people to operate it. It used to take 2 of them at least, one to go around with the actual weed dripper and one to sweep up afterwards. We've now invested, and it was an investment, in a sort of ride-on thing that looks a bit like a street sweeper, but actually is a weed dripper. And we've managed in the town to get round every road in the town. The plan is to do every road once a year. And that's in a large town like Exmouth. So, even if we don't leave it to Devon County Council and we do it ourselves, there are alternatives for the kind of thing we're talking about. Dicophar would be ineffective against the grass growth anyway, that builds up there. And I wonder why we're kind of contemplating further environmental damage when we're supposed to be going the other way. And as Paula pointed out, weeds are wildflowers. And so we go and plant whole areas with plants for pollinators, and then we go and kill wildflowers in other places. Now, I get it. I mean, I fight an ongoing battle against weeds on my allotment all the time. So I understand, you know, a weed is a plant in the wrong place. There's nothing wrong with it inherently. But I also try and leave wild areas, because I learned the other night the common thistle supports something like 200 insect species. So I feel we need to get a bit more relaxed about what we consider to be neat and tidy. I think there's a bit of an obsession with tidiness, and I know it can look unkempt and it can look as though nobody cares about it. And I accept that there are certain places where we are going to need to try and keep things a bit clean. But having looked at the report, the one with all the photographs, I won't say anything about the person who produced that report, but I have serious misgivings about it. And I feel that it's very overstated that young mums couldn't get their buggies along a pavement until all the grass had been cleared. Yeah, needs cutting back a bit in places, but it's not something that we need to be going and using huge amounts of weed killer on just to kind of keep things looking neat and tidy. So I can support recommendation 1, because that says let's stop using hot foam. I think it's resource intensive, it's not particularly effective, and I think it's quite expensive, isn't it? The vinegar trials, I think, could be extended. It's relatively harmless, and actually it does give instant results. And I don't know if it's to do with a difference in the time of year that the photographs at Sidmouth Cemetery were taken, but there seemed to be a totally different type of growth occurring there. We started off with a load of grass and we ended up with a load of what looks to me like a ridgeron. What's it called? Mexican fleabane, which I have a lot of in my drive at home. I used to fight a battle against it and then I gave up. And now I've decided actually it's quite attractive. And when it dies back in the winter, we go down with a brush and we clear it out, and then the whole cycle starts again. So I hope, some people come to my house might think, yeah, it looks pretty unkempt with all that erigeron growing there, but it's quite pretty, it's quite attractive, and I like it. So I think I can support recommendation 1, I can't support recommendation 2, and what was recommendation 3? Yeah, well, it's their responsibility. They're not going to do anything about it. But if they're not, then, do like Esmouth Town Council and recommend Sidmouth does the same. If they want to get in touch with us, we'll tell them what to do.
Yeah, very quickly. Look, I'm not disagreeing with anyone. I just think that at the end of the day, glyphosate is safer, if you read it, than Dicofar. And if we are going to have to use bits of it, then there are times when you have to bite it and say that at the end of the day, it is necessary. And I'd rather use something that we have some sort of scientific evidence on than something that we don't, that is effective. We know it's effective. And I totally agree about the bees. As I said, I think it's wrong that we spray thousands of acres across the country of farmland. But using small amounts, again, you let the general public loose with it rather than trained operatives, and using small amounts of glyphosate to solve problems that you cannot do. Or give us the money and give them the resources to go out and solve the problem. Because at the end of the day, we talk about people's mental health and their pride in place. You might accept it, but a lot of people don't like it. And whereas before we used to help Devon County Council, because we know they wouldn't do it, they're not going to do it now. They haven't got any more money left than we have. And at the end of the day, it just looks unkept. And it's usually the areas that aren't posh that look worse, because they're just abandoned, it feels, when you go up to some of them. So, look, I go around the streets, I try and fix them. We do the raking, we do the weed ripping, we do the hoeing, but that's damaging the roads as well. And we're just storing up huge problems for a few years down the line, rather than careful use of chemicals, correct careful use, not, as I said, where the public use it, don't use it properly, wash it, farmers spraying thousands of acres. It just seems that, again, like all things, we're searching for perfection, and that comes at the cost of good. And at the end of the day, we are, I just think, losing a battle for a tiny amount of something. You know, you're talking about vinegar. We don't know what that does to subsoil they're now talking about. Does it hurt? Does it hurt the spiders? I don't know. You can't tell us that we can do a trial. We're not scientists. What do you expect them to do? Dig out a section, put in a glass, measure the bugs in it first? It's not going to happen. You've got to rely on gold standard science, which comes from, or should come from, your government. Not the next government at the next level of council up Devon County. They don't do it. They don't have the scientists. It comes from the government. They have expert panels. We do not. Listen to the government. What they say we should use, we should be allowed to use. Thank you.
Go on, then I'm going to close.
Very, very quickly, I mean, what Ollie said is really boils down to education.
Yes.
And if you go to Taunton City Council in the summer, they have signs on the verges explaining why they're hairy and rough. That's all we need to do.
And if you listen to Cardiff Council, who've gone out to Cardiff University and listened to them, they're now bringing back glyphosate.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Right. This is a difficult one, without a shadow of a doubt. What I would like to suggest you to consider, that I think it's quite clear that recommendation 2, we as a committee, I get the impression we do not want to accept. However, what is absolutely clear tonight is, have we got the specialist scientific evidence to show what we should be doing? And Anne spoke about coming through to overview, and I spoke to Andrew just now. I just wonder if the right way is to get some proper scientific evidence that says what should we be doing, because I can tell you, I've done like a lot of you, I've done a lot of research, but I am not a scientist. I can only go on AI and all the other stuff that I've been reading. But Exeter did do some really good stuff that I read, and others have done good stuff. There are 2 ways to look at these things, I accept that. But I just wonder if what we should be saying is we want some proper specialist help, scientific specialist help, to make a decision on what we do as a council going forward. This may mean that Devon look at it, but I don't like the feel of continuing with this, and I think you all have said the same. But what do we do? And I think we need some proper scientific advice. Andrew, I know you're here as a director here, but would you like to make any comment before we discuss that?
Thank you, Chair. So it's been a really interesting debate for me. It's not my area of expertise by any means, but I'm interested in the term in the report around the integrated weed management framework. And I think, from my understanding is that views a kind of hierarchy where chemicals are only used as a last resort. And what I hear from the committee is that you want a reassurance that that is absolutely the approach. Clearly, the step before that around kind of the hot foam, and going back to the March 2022 report, I think it was, there was a significant investment, over £60,000 in that, which clearly is not working, and that is highlighted. And so you still want the reassurance that when you go through that hierarchy, when you get to the last 4th step, that the minimum amount of the least damaging chemicals are being used to address the issues and the giant hogweeds and other things. And for me, that does feel, what's our framework here? How is that set out in a way you're confident and assured by? If it comes to overview, I can see that it's a sensible way forward. Obviously, I'm mindful of capacity and resources within the team, and that's been a real theme recently, last night at budget, around capacity, and this is about juggling. So I wonder whether, as part of that process coming back, I could take it away, discuss with the team what that framework would look like, what support we would need in order to bring that to overview in a sensible timescale. And if there's a budgetary implication, we need to be mindful of that, Chair, given our kind of pushed resources. Does that make sense?
It makes. And did you want to say so quickly, Vicky? And then.
Oops.
Sorry. All I was going to say is recommendation 2 has actually got 2 parts to it. So streets need to continue to use DICE for selective weed killer where suitable. So that's one part. And for its use to be rolled out more widely, subject to the continued success of trials. I think we all agree that there needs to be something for certain plants in certain areas, which is what Andy's just basically said. Use it in a selected area whilst we look and see how it affects the ground beneath it, etc. Not us personally, but the people that are aware of these things while we look into it. It's the second part for its use to be rolled out more widely that I was objecting to earlier. Because I don't see how we can roll it out more widely when we don't know how it's affecting the soil it's currently being used at.
Well,
there was two parts.
And it's licensed for.
I think the concern I would have with continue to use it, we're using that when we're not using other chemicals, and it's been known, and we've had several people comment, this is not a particularly good chemical to use. And I just wonder if we let Andrew take it away, and what is the consequences of not using this from next week? What effect will it have? And I think the service needs to look at it, but I don't like the idea from this meeting saying carry on using it, because that goes against what I think this committee is thinking.
Could we ask Andrew Wood to go and look at it and then come back to us perhaps at our next meeting to say what he suggests we do?
I think you might need more than 4 weeks, so Andrew might need. He's got.
I don't know where to take it.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. I'm conscious I'm kind of sat some distance away from colleagues as well. And I probably have a quiet word, in terms of, understanding this. And I'm conscious an awful lot of time and effort went into the report in the first place as well. And it's just the kind of clarity around that, or that reassurance and that framework that we've moved through all of those steps. And I can't have that conversation now, obviously. So, sorry.
Can I suggest that we just take 2 minutes and then come back? Yeah. So we just stop for 2 minutes, short break, and then come back and then sum up when we come back. Is that okay with everybody? Okay. Thank you. Right. We've been talking, and thank you very much for the contribution. We've come up with a suggestion of wording to use for a second recommendation, or after the 1 in 3 we all accept we will keep, but replace 2 with this one. I'm going to hand over to Anita.
Thank you. So as the Chair says, recommendations 1 and 3 to remain as proposed. Recommendation 2, recommendation in the report to be deleted and replaced with Director of Place to consider how the integrated weed management framework can be developed and brought for consideration by Overview Committee, including consideration of resources and the impact from other services.
Thank you, Ian, for that excellent comment.
I tried hard.
Seriously, can I thank Andrew and the team to come up with that, because I think this is an important step forward, and I want to thank all of you for your contribution. And as I said earlier, I came into this meeting not knowing how this was going to go, but I think we've seen some really good, quality, open debate, which can only help this council. And who knows, what we come up with may be taken to other councils in the future. But thank you. Now, before I go on to the next item, we need to agree whether or not you agree with those now 3 recommendations. All those in favour?
Are you proposing?
I'm proposing it. I'm proposing it from there. Yeah. So we all in favour? Yes, he's gone. He's gone to another parish council. Right. Well, thank you for that. A most interesting item. Now we're going on to, and we've only at 7:30. Right, we've got item 9, which is going to be the Climate Change Action Plan Review, which is on pages 16 to page 40. And I'm going to hand over to both of you, to 3 of you, actually, are going to do this.
Chair, if I may, do you mind me doing a quick introduction?
Of course not. Carry on.
Thank you very much. Wonderful. So, yeah, just to introduce this piece, this year the council has made genuine and measurable progress on its carbon plan. Over the year 24-25, the total emissions have dropped by 4.9% compared with last year. I'd like to recognise there's a long way to go on in this journey, but this reduction demonstrates that we've taken actions and they're starting to have a real impact. I'd just like to highlight as well, we've seen priority in several good success in several priority areas, and so we've seen the emissions linked to procurement, social housing and business travel drop, and as those are quite a large proportion of what the council does, even small changes in those have a big effect. Also like to highlight the successes in the nature recovery and green infrastructure area. We're getting good levels of tree planting going in the district. We've had a 3rd new tiny forest down in Exmouth, and also the work in Cliff Meadows and Percy Wakely Woods, which will deliver biodiversity net gain and improve flood resistance, better access to nature, as well as supporting those climate adaptation ambitions as well. So we've also been supporting communities and local businesses with a number of different projects that deliver real carbon savings, and also these have lots of co-benefits. In fact, I think there was a LED lights at Exmouth Community College were turned on this week, and that was part of a grant from the Carbon Action Fund that was given out. So that's carbon savings and great things for our residents as well. And importantly, also we're preparing for the next phase of delivery, updating the climate change strategy and action plan documents to be able to focus on what needs to be done and also measure those reductions more accurately. At the same time as that, we recognise some of the risks around capacity and organisational change that's happening at the moment. and those are just in the report too. And I just wanted to finish up by saying thank you to the officers for all their hard work and persistence over this last year and before that, and what comes through with my interactions with a passion for nature and climate and pushing towards those shared goals. And I look forward to our journey towards net zero. Thank you.
Well, can I, Richard, thank you for coming tonight and giving us that overview, and I really do appreciate giving your time up tonight. Now I'm going to hand over to our three officers. You take it in turn, whoever's going to come first. Matthew, I expect.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We have got a presentation tonight rather than just sort of going through the report. I thought it might be quite helpful. And just say, yeah, between myself and Catherine, we'll be giving the report, but I'd also like to introduce you to Barry James, who's the new corporate lead for programmes and strategies, and he'll be picking up climate change from now on from myself. So this is my swan song on climate change. So yes, waving a fond farewell.
Matthew, could you just, because I'm not sure if all the committee know that climate change is going to rest with Melanie Wellman going forward as governance.
Correct.
And I'm not sure everybody is aware of that.
Correct. Okay, so if you're happy, can we? All right. Do I need to do F5? There we go. Right, so thank you, Chair. This is an update of where we got to with the Climate Change Strategy and Action Plan. It's a slightly unusual timing for this, because here we are 10 months into 25, 26. So we're well past last year's carbon footprint, which is kind of like the fundamental part of what the report's about. But we haven't yet got to the point where we're going to be running the next one for a few months. We're almost midway through the year. So it's made the structure of the report a little bit tricky, because it is a bit between the two stools. So effectively what we've done is giving you an update as to where we are now, even though it's partway through the year. And I think the other thing is, as well, and I know, Chair, you picked this up, is that the action plan isn't the same action plan that was presented at previous scrutiny. Now, there is a reason for that, because basically the previous action plan came to an end, and last time, November 24, we effectively gave a full review of the action plan. So what we did in the meantime is, while we're preparing the updated strategy and the updated action plan, we did an interim one for a year to keep it going. So that's kind of what we're referring back to in this report, so hence why you got a different one. So we took all the outstanding actions from the previous action plan, added in the new ones from the service plans for this year, and moved on from there. So that's kind of why it's a different action plan, even though some of the stuff in there is actually repeated. So I hope that gives some clarity as to where we're coming from now. So just a little bit of background, it's a bit almost one we do every year, just to remind members that in 2019 we expressed our support for the Devon Climate Emergency Declaration. In 2020 we identified it as a key strategic priority. We introduced the Climate Change Strategy and Action Plan with the target of becoming carbon neutral council within a low carbon economy and lifestyle, affecting our travel, homes, businesses, visit experiences and communities. And the overall target was to reduce carbon emissions annually and to be carbon neutral by 2040. And then the strategy and action plan was reviewed after 5 years, which was last year. So, just as I said already, we're in the process of reviewing the strategy and the action plan. We actually have the draft pretty much ready to go, just need to go through ELT. And then we'll be looking to bring that out to some workshops to members to get their feedback. I think, as you can probably appreciate, the strategy has always been quite a high-level document. It gives a general direction of travel. The action plan is what provides the meat on the bones, as I keep referring to. So that will be coming in the not too distant future. Like I say, just need to take you through ELT. But as far as this report goes, just to give some headline figures, overall, since we started our carbon footprint exercise in 2018-19, our carbon footprint has dropped significantly. So in 18-19, it was 32,789 tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalent. And just confusingly, the one we need to look down is the one just to near the bottom, 25,305, was the carbon footprint for 24-25, which is our most recent one. So we have seen overall a significant reduction. Now, we have to treat that slightly carefully, because there have also been, as we've moved on, we've got a different understanding, different methodologies in how we calculate some of that carbon. We've got a better system for doing it, and it changes. And we try to keep the figures comparable over the years, but you will see a bit of fiddling around with the figures, and that's not fiddling the figures, that's just to make sure they all add up. So we have seen a significant reduction. One of the problems that you might remember that we have had in terms of the figures is COVID-19. It knocked out a whole year's worth of data because we just didn't do the footprint in that year. But also it has meant that we artificially reduced the amount of carbon that we would normally see because we effectively stopped working. And then it's gradually built back up again post that. So it does give a slightly misleading representation. So we're in a slightly odd position that we're not 100% sure of what our sort of our target, our descent plan is, how it's going. But what we have seen this year is a significant reduction of just under 5% in our carbon emissions, which is positive. I think what we obviously do need to bear in mind is this a trend or is this a one-off, and we'll need to keep that under close control. And it's really important that we get the strategy and the action plan over the line. So there's a little graph there, just shows that. So that's what I'm saying about there. From 2020, 2021, there was a significant increase as we came back to work post-COVID. And then in 24, 25, we saw that reduction. And just so you know, that that's split into scope 1, 2 and 3 emissions. The big yellow one is our scope 3 emissions related to procurement. That's always been a bit of a tricky one because procurement tends to be based on cost. So how much we spend is equivalent to how much the carbon, which is not it's a very blunt tool for measurement. It's something we'd like to improve on, but at least it is comparable year on year. So we've seen a slight reduction in that. And the large blue area, that's our scope 1 emissions, that's direct emissions from combustion. And the big chunk of that is our social housing, as you might expect. So those are the two significant areas of our emissions. And if we delve into those a little bit more detail, you can see procurement's 36% of our total, social housing 40.7%. That's the majority of our footprint. What we have seen is a relatively significant reduction in our procurement based on the costs, down almost 1,000 tonnes or almost 10% last year. We've also seen some significant reductions in social housing emissions of 5.7%, and also on our grey fleet emissions as well. I would say as well, we've got some other things that we'll need to take into account going forward. So for instance, our white fleet, we know that we've made significant strides. There's been some excellent work in the street scene about moving to electrifying the vehicle fleet. That's not reflected in this report because of the timing of it. So there are things that have been ongoing in the meantime. So I think we have to say that the overall reduction is positive, but also to be treated with a certain amount of, we have to keep the pressure on because we don't know if this is a trend as yet. So we'll keep obviously pushing away on that one. And as I said, the next carbon footprint exercise will take place in May, June of this year to cover this year, if you like, and then we can report back on that in due course. So what we'll do is I'm going to hand over to Catherine now, who's going to give a little bit of feedback on some of the key achievements over last year. I think just to reflect as well to members is obviously we come here and we sit here and we kind of give the sort of the front, if you like, for climate change, but actually there's a huge amount of work going on in the services and we rely very heavily on their information they provide to us for what they've achieved, and it is a real corporate approach. So Catherine, can I pass over to you?
Hello, Chair. Right, so we've I'm going to start off with some things that I've done. So we've drafted and updated the climate change strategy, and we've updated the action plan, and we closed the old one off and put that one to bed. And we worked really hard this week to use the carbon descent plan, and we did lots of work with all our fabulous colleagues and all our services. And that was actually a massive piece of work. Through our green team, which is our internal mechanism for delivering climate change, we have in 24-25 allocated about £250,000 worth of funding. It's worth noting not all those projects have gone ahead, for a range of reasons. Carbon literacy, some of the councillors here have attended it, and I've now managed to train with my colleague Brendan. We've done 36 officers, and that's been really a great way to sort of start spreading the knowledge within the council. And the Welcome to Devon climate change training as well. So we're really trying to build these things into the systems. Then I'm going to start moving on to some of the other services, because actually some of the more impressive work is done by my colleagues. So nature recovery has obviously been a key thing. You know, we have planted, well, they've supported the planting of 3,000 trees through Section 106 funding. But this is just trees under that. So the work that we capture here is the work that was in the action plan. I've got my rag rating here. So it's this work. Lots of other trees have been planted, but I don't capture that data. So that's one of our key challenges going forward. So we've done some amazing work, the Countryside team and Will and all his colleagues that he's been involved with around biodiversity net gain. Cliffs Meadows work is underway to deliver over 10%. Green infrastructure, Percy Weekly Woods gets another honourable mention, and we're looking at sang space there. We've invested through some Green Team funding to support Broadcliffs Tree Nursery, and this is a hugely important project which is going to really support having local sustainably grown trees in the area. EV charging, we're installed in 14 council car parks, and going forwards there's a plan to put another set of charges into 14 car parks going forwards, and we see huge spikes in the summer with our tourists. They're very, very well used. Energy intensive security lighting was one which we saw. The figures always surprise me by how brilliant they are. So our colleagues at Street Scene did some work replacing some energy intensive security lighting, and they have saved 81% in running costs by just replacing this lighting. And we've done some work with them in Swig to develop a tool so we can help identify other projects we could potentially use. And obviously investment in businesses, communities and skills is always a core priority for us, and we're in year 3 of the delivery of the Carbon Action Fund, and in 24-25 they supported 15 projects which were made up of 7 businesses and 8 community organisations. And that's expected to deliver carbon savings of around 80 tonnes per year, and I was lucky enough to work with them to help them look at systems to capture the data. So the Retrofit Schools programme, which is delivered by Exeter College, and this has supported 85 additional learners, including my support officer Louis, who went and did one of their courses. And they've done a range of net zero related skills and accreditations, such as to support the local retrofit supply chain and supporting the economic transition. And we've also commissioned and overseen a £207,000 carbon action programme, which has been delivering to East Devon businesses. One of the projects that's one of my favourites, I know you shouldn't have favourites, but I really do, it's a bit of a favourite of mine, is the Community Action Groups project. And this is supporting local community action, delivering sustainability projects and driving community-led work. And we funded it for the first year, and we've just had it extended. It's going to be running until September this year. And in 24-25, they calculated that they'd saved 150 tonnes of carbon emissions avoided, 54 tonnes of waste prevented, and 35 tonnes of waste diverted from landfill to energy from waste. And the volunteer stuff is the stuff that's really brilliant, and they reckon it's worth about £57,000. And thankfully, the Green Team, we work to extend that further, and they're doing some amazing work, hopefully this year, with our colleagues in Countryside. Community engagement is so important, and it's a key part of actually the work that we're doing, and Seaton Wetlands is the shining star in all of this, and they welcomed almost 125,000 visitors in 2025, which was an increase of 11% on the previous year. I was out there the other day, I'd forgotten how wonderful it is, I must go up again. And their volunteer involvement is exceptional. There's 6,327 volunteer hours, and this is, has a huge value of around £77,000. The Green Team, again, we take working with our colleagues and our networks very seriously. So with the support of SWEG, Exeter University, which is Southwest Energy Environment Group, and working with Exmouth Town Council, we look to roll out a carbon footprinting exercise to support Exmouth Festival and to measure their carbon footprint, and then design a toolkit to look at ways that they can reduce the impact of that going forwards. this was the pilot project. We now have this toolkit, so we hope to be able to roll it out going forwards with events that we run on our land, so we can kind of spread our impact further, kind of behaviour change nudge. And decarbonising of housing. There's 120 social housing properties that have been identified to receive energy efficiency upgrades, and we're looking at uplifting 60 of these properties from an EPC rating of a D to a B, resulting in warmer, more comfortable houses for our tenants.
Thanks, Catherine. So there's been a lot of really good work going on within the whole council. You know, we have to really sort of celebrate that, but at the same time we know that there are lessons to be learned. I think, you know, one thing we have identified was the previous action plan. It wasn't smart enough. It's very difficult to quantify carbon emissions. When we come to do the carbon footprint every year, we have to effectively go cap in hand to everyone to get the information. We don't have a proper reporting process. And because of that, we are looking with the new in-phase system to include carbon metrics within that, and that should make life a lot easier. Obviously, we are still waiting for the in-phase system, which is coming down the road, but when we've flagged up, this has been a key priority from our point of view, and we are keeping on with that one. Also as part of that, we'll be looking to work with Southwest Energy Environment Group to redo the descent plan. So back in 24, we did the descent plan, which gave us some idea, and a lot of the previous action plan was based around that in terms of what we deliver, because it gives us a flight path for our carbon reduction plans. We'll look to review that next year. I mentioned about carbon metrics being so important, and one of the things, and I think this is going to be a real massive benefit of having Barry take over at a corporate level, fitting it into projects and actually having that at the outset and making sure that, you know, it's a fundamental part of project management going forwards. And I think the other thing that we've realised as well is it was one of the first things I had to do when I came here back in end of 22 into big 23 was to set up the green team. So the green team, which is a forum for officers to get together from all the different services to discuss carbon and green related issues. And it's been a really positive forum for that discussion, and I think it's now time, especially in light of local government reorganisation, just to review in terms of that one and make sure it's still delivering what we want to deliver, and actually push that forward. But as we've already said, you know, it's a really useful opportunity for officers to consider funding requirements. So when we get a request for funding through the carbon budget, it comes to the green team first to make sure that they're in support of it. So prior to going to any other decision making. And I think, you know, we also have to acknowledge the other excellent work that we've done around decarbonisation of our fleet, increased work with the community on adaptation and mitigation, training and provision of green grants to businesses and residents. Some of the challenges that we've had this year, because we're not quite where we want to be, because we did want to have the strategy and action plan done in 2025 and we didn't achieve it. Not quite, it's almost there. And I think local government reorganisation did throw in a bit of a span in the works because we have a 2040 target and a 2028 end of the council potential as it stands at the moment, which has made us have to have a bit of a rethink. And that'll be reflected in the new strategy going forwards. We've obviously had the restructure, which has brought Barry in, and he'll be picking that up, which obviously that has taken a certain amount of bandwidth to make sure that that was working correctly. One of the big problems we've had this year was we did try to recruit to a new climate change manager post, and the initial recruitment was unsuccessful, by which time the restructure was suggested, and now I'm afraid to say I've left it to Barry to sort out. So sorry, Barry. And then we've also had some lengthy absences within the team too. So overall, we have had some problems in terms of just restructuring and resourcing, which hasn't helped. And as I said already, we've mentioned about data collection continues to be a challenge, and we're hoping that the new system will allow us a much more streamlined way of not only collecting the data, but also presenting it to, and actually having some information that would be readily to hand. So overall, I think we can say that the 5% reduction in carbon emissions over the past year is encouraging, and we've had a number of positive actions that the council has delivered towards the strategy in the past year. But we do need to maintain the progress, and we do need the new climate change strategy and action plan in 2026. So I hope that the recommendation that the Scrutiny Committee note the progress made in achieving the actions specified in the Climate Change Action Plan 2024-2025 is acceptable. Thank you, Chair. any questions.
Thank you. No, I'm going to be unusual. I'm going to ask you 2 or 3 to start with, then I will allow people outside the committee to come in. 2 or 3 things. One, with regard to our emissions, it went up in 2024. And when you were saying that our carbon footprint now is coming down, it is in 2024. Is it 20? No, 23. So 24 came down. However, when you look at where we are against the UK, we didn't see a reduction, yet the UK did. And I spent a lot of time looking at this and wondering why. And I'm just questioning, are we measuring it the same way as all the other councils and everybody else? And I don't know the answer, but it seems strange why our carbon went up, whereas overall the UK has come down. The second point I want to say is that when you've done your strategy, I take it will go to Anne in overview before it goes to Cabinet, because that would be the right logical way to do it. And thirdly, I wonder if you could encourage the directors to put more comments in on the climate change points on their reports. It's something I have said before, because most reports have a climate change effect in some way, and I think we're missing a trick there. And as you've done the training, I would just ask, not making too much of it, but I think there's an opportunity there. Over to you, Matt.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I think we'll have to do a bit of a tag team on this one. So if I start with your second question first, the plan is that because what we want to do is present members with a chance to actually have an input into it. So rather than presenting it at the final version to overview, and then what we want to do is run the workshops first. So that's the plan. So that will give everyone has the opportunity to input into it and to get their feedback prior to taking to overview and then to Cabinet. So yes, it might sound a little bit unwieldy, but we thought that'd be really helpful to actually get that buy-in. I don't know because I think the other thing as well is we've discussed this in terms of public consultation, and because Devon Climate Emergency did such a huge piece of work around theirs, we thought that would be maybe excessive, but we thought if we maybe extended it out to our local membership to say, what are your opinions, that would probably achieve that prior to getting it approved. So that's the plan. With regard to the third question about directors' comments, well, and ADs presumably, for reports, it is an ongoing challenge. Clearly at the moment we do have the climate change element to the reporting format and template. We have discussed internally about potential tools for assessing that in a bit more detail. We haven't got it over the line yet. And clearly, it's always a difficult one from a climate change perspective from the team, because on the one hand, you want to know everything that's coming in about climate change, but if that happened, we'd be inundated. So it's knowing those projects, those elements, those pieces of work that are important enough to warrant input, and those that aren't, and it's trying to build that. So again, and I think with Barry's work around the projects, that will probably really help as well. So if I can pass you back to Catherine for question 1.
Right, so we use the greenhouse gas protocol, and SWE get Exeter University do that for us every year, and they also do the carbon footprint of I think the majority of councils in Devon. So Devon Climate Emergency have seen that they have gone 9% over their budget, their carbon budget for the period 2020 to 2025. And they are looking to see, one of the things we did last year, didn't we, Matt? We looked at reprioritising it to see how we can work better. And actually, myself and Louis, the support officer, we're getting involved in some of that project sprint work. We have seen, in general, a reduction, and that tends to be because of decarbonisation of the grid. As we phase out coal, we're bringing on more renewable sources. So, but I'm afraid I haven't seen the data that you've seen, and I would happily review it if you want to send it to me.
No, all I've done is, what I often do is just go on the net and see what other councils have done and what the UK have done. And all I'm saying, we seem to be behind, and I just don't understand why with all the work we're doing. And it was, and I think what's done it is it 2023 when we went up. If we'd have carried on in 2023 coming down, we would have been okay. But something happened. I don't know what, but something
started
happened.
spending money again after having to kind of pivot, you know, during lockdown. And I think that was a big chunk of, because we do it, a lot of it's spend-based.
We will move on because I've taken too much time. Peter, did you have your hand up first outside?
Well, yes, possibly. Repair cafes. I mean, there's two aspects to this. Is what we can do for ourselves and what we can do for the community. On one of my election campaigns, I was speaking to somebody who had a bit of what is now a vintage car, but some of us remember when they were new, as a Ford Escort Mark whatever. And his comment was, we could have a bigger impact by not building any more cars. How big does repair cafes go? Is it just things you can put on a table, or do we go bigger than that? Because some of us remember there was all sorts of other things we used to have. I don't know if they're still around. Parents used to go to evening classes, upholstering furniture and woodwork and all sorts of stuff and repairing all sorts of things. And I wonder how much of that, is it just little nicky-nack things on a repair cafe, or do they do bigger? And can we expand on that a lot more? Looking at the other things, I think on a similar note, I think we should do a lot more to promote. I think we can have bigger impact by supporting other people to do things. We're very limited to what we can do in-house to ourselves because we're a limited space and limited impact, but I think we can do probably more over the district for the community.
So repair cafes are my thing. So I used to work with them when I worked for Devon County Council. I ran the world's biggest repair event 2 years running, actually. So I love a repair cafe, and I'm so pleased. We've got Exmouth has one of the longest running repair cafes in the UK. In Exmouth, it's been running 10 years now, and they are fantastic. It very much depends on who you've got in there. So Councillor Fernley's been very involved. They've just set up Broadcliff's Repair Cafe. So it all depends on who you've got. So lots of tech, lots of sewing, lots of people fixing stuff. And I absolutely think that Repair Cafe is the way to go. And you're right. That community action, they have such a reach, much more than we can, which is one of the reasons why we funded the CAG project going forwards. I always say people don't necessarily want to listen to me, but you will listen to people within your own community. So that's why we're trying to support this way of working. And when it comes to sort of skills and things like that, there's lots of skills. I'm pretty useless as it goes about anything kind of creative, but I've gone and done a sewing course, and I did a crochet course. Things like Exeter College and the Kenway Centre in Exmouth run these little short courses, and so there are places you can go and learn these. And we do promote these through our social media and our comms. They're on our website under our climate change section, I actually helped set up Exmouth Library of Things, and we're always working with people who want to do things like this and give them information to support it. And you will see throughout the year on our social media posts where we do promote and share all this community action to get people engaged.
So, I mean, what exactly are we doing across the district to roll out more of these sort of things?
So that's a function that's actually taken on by Devon County Council through the Recycle Devon service. They have a reuse officer. I used to be that officer before I came here, and her role, she's called Jen, and her role is to work with community groups. So people like Turntable, people like Refurnish, but also repair cafes and libraries of things, community food larders, community fridges, and those sorts of projects. Obviously, we're also within East Devon District Council. We have our community development workers, and they do a lot of this work related to areas in our tenanted areas. So there is quite a lot of this going on, and we try to work as effectively together as we can. People like CAG run things called collaborate sessions, where they'll link up repair cafes in Devon. There's 16 in Devon at the moment.
Richard.
And then
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to pick up on Peter's point of supporting others to be able to deliver some of these strategies, and I think that's a particularly important point. I think Catherine picked up most of what I was going to say on that one, but I just wanted to pick out an example of the kind of thing that I'm really proud we're doing, and that's the Broadcast Tree Nursery. Just an example, not it specifically, but as a part of a system, we can pick up something that we recognise is needed in the area, and if we weren't able to help that continue, then that would mean there was, and we alluded to earlier with the number of trees we actually directly plant ourselves, there's many more people out there doing these things. But if the infrastructure for that, or say the ecosystem for that, isn't out there, and I know lots of local tree nurseries haven't survived economically, and that is something we can do for the climate and also for biodiversity. It's really, really important to have local seed stock for our trees. So instead of having a program where we'd be saying we're going to plant 10,000 trees, much more valuable to say somebody's planting 10,000 trees and they are the trees that are suitable for this climate at the moment and have adapted to where they are. So it's those things with not being able to focus those monies into different groups who are already doing great things.
I think the point you're making also is that in practice it's something we need to look at when you develop and finish the strategy, is how can we get councillors and also local people to get involved to help deliver it, because people often think it's the council's job to deliver it. No, we all have a role to play, dare I say it, in delivering it. And you mentioned the trees. We all could plant trees, but it's getting behind it and working with each other. So I think maybe something that one can look at going forward, because I do think encouraging our councillors and our neighbours and community groups is really important to deliver it. Jeff.
Yeah, just to pick up a couple of examples that we do almost by default. Excess tree with the habitat mitigation that we do there. There's a lot of seagrass, and seagrass is 5 times more efficient on carbon capture than trees. So now we're doing that by default. Waste and recycling. People forget why we do this. We don't send anything to landfill anymore. Everything that goes to 61% of our stuff goes to recycling. We're one of the leading councils in that. And with the incinerator, nothing is wasted from that. Everything is actually used now. So there's 2 examples of we're actually doing it by default.
Absolutely, thank you. Richard, do you want to come back?
Just very briefly, Chair, if I may. Yes, I'd like suggesting getting councillors more involved, and I think that's a great idea. But also the bit about supporting others to do that. I think as part of the strategy that's in there already, and I think Catherine mentioned earlier the continued supporting of CAG. It's also about not reinventing something that's already out there, but supporting. We know that's out there now, so there's been an awful lot of work done on working out what's out there already and how we can support those people who've already got those things ready to go, and that increases the pace at which you can deliver these things as well. If we all went out and said, right, community groups all come and have a meeting with us and we'll organise everything, whereas we can go out to different groups, not necessarily just CAG, and say, what can you do with the people you already know in that system, and support it that way, and that makes things happen faster, I think, as well.
It may be a good idea that once the strategy's done, that you book meetings with all the town and parish council, even if some of those are in groups, because they're good enablers. I know what Ian does in the environment in Sidmouth, but not all councils, parish and town councils do it. So getting them involved, I think, should be key. Look, last one outside, because it's Roy.
Thank you, Chair. I went to a meeting, I suppose 3 or 4 weeks ago, Blackdown Transition Group. They do all sorts of things, and one thing they were doing, they were organising not a workshop, what you were just talking about at Hemyock, and I took along a food mixer Mother bought back in 1964. It hadn't worked, but when they looked at it, I felt such a fool because the only thing was wrong with it needed a new plug. And, and I took my record player, and that really, I suppose, not been used to play the old vinyl for so long, it had sort of seized up. So they put some magic spray in under and got it all working, so I can hear all my old vinyl again now. But going back to carbon program, which East Devon, I went to one of their workshops at Heron Farm back in the autumn 24, and that was fully subscribed, and that was excellent there. And last May, they had one all day at Bicton College, which East Devon ran, and that was excellent also. And there were a lot of discussion there about lots of different things, about mobile abattoirs and things, and solar panels. And they were talking about solar panels, not to put them slanted in these fields like you see everywhere, to have them upright. Put solar panels upright, and not put them all the way across the fields, put them round the outside of the field. They could put a little electric wire around to keep the cattle and livestock off. I thought that was excellent, and these solar panels stood upright. They will work 24 hours, not just a few hours like the ones on the roofs. And going back to East Devon Council Strategic Planning Committee, they have allocated 1,025 hectares for developments, out of which 698 acres are classified agricultural land. So 68% of the land in East Devon in their plan is agricultural land. I talk in the public section at every strategic planning meeting, trying to urge them to save agricultural land and build at higher densities or rise up. So, because if you take all this land, where is the food coming from? We need to be producing more food locally in East Devon. We don't want our food coming from South America. I expect you've seen there have been protests all over Europe. There was a big one in Spain yesterday. They're ongoing all the time, these protests, to stop South American trade deals to bring their food here. And just imagine what carbon that's going to use. And you've got a power station in Yorkshire, Drax. They bring firewood from America to burn to produce electricity. That's supposed to be saving carbon. How is it saving carbon when a ship's burning goodness knows how many thousands of gallons of diesel to get it to Yorkshire and everything else? A lot of things in this country, we're just exporting it. It's not happening. We're not really saving any carbon at all. No, I think we as a council could do a lot more, particularly with saving our agricultural land. And is there any more programs planned for this year, workshops for carbon, please? Thank you.
Did you want to come along and do my carbon literacy training? Have you not been? Well, Councillor Barlow can tell you all about it. You let me know. You let me know when you're available. I need a team of 6 people, but I absolutely, and if you just want to, if you want to have like a bit of an informal training session and cover some facts, absolutely happy to do that as well. Just drop me an email and we'll see what we can arrange.
Thank you. Thank you. Right, inside now, Ollie, and then Paula.
Right, well, bringing us back to the actual report, although
Well done.
Roy's intervention is very interesting there. You're well done on including scope 3 in the figures at all. And obviously it's very difficult to calculate. And I think you said it was done on cost, which, as you said, is a very blunt instrument. I mean, it seems extremely blunt. So if we switch to recycled paper, we probably have already, and the cost is the same, assuming the recycled paper is actually a lower carbon footprint. I always prefer to see the figures on this. That has no effect on our supposed carbon footprint. And if prices go up, which they are, then our carbon footprint goes up, even if we're actually going the other way. So what I wanted to ask is, are there alternative methods that you're looking at of doing those calculations? So obviously if you change the metrics, then it skews all your results because you don't know then how it compares with the previous year. But I think having a more accurate calculator for those scope 3 emissions, which is notoriously tricky, would be really good. And yes, and I only know about scope 3 having done the carbon literacy training. Thank you, Catherine, but I can do with a refresher, so I'm always available.
Thanks, Cassidy. Yeah, I completely agree. It's an incredibly blunt tool. There are tools out there to do that. The problem when you talk an organisation this size, it's highly complex. It wouldn't be a quick fix. And we are in a position where, 2 years' time, things are potentially not going to be here. So it's not to say we shouldn't have that ambition to try and get something better in. It's certainly something we've identified. But I think it's one of these ones we'd have to balance out the cost of time of doing it with potentially being in a new organisation in 2 years. And you're absolutely right in the sense that if we were to change how we measure it, we'd then have to retrospectively apply that to what we've done before to have a vague understanding as to whether we compare it. And it's a bit like I said during the presentation, it's a moving feast. So I don't think it should stop our ambition, but we do have to temper it slightly, I believe.
Paula.
Thanks, Mike. Have a glass of water. Thank you, Catherine, for the report, and everyone else. It's amazing what we're doing. There is some great stuff out there. CAG, yeah, the more we can support CAG, the better, because they are so integral in our communities for information. It's just fantastic. The information I got back for setting up our repair cafe, Carolyn Day was so very helpful. So I really appreciate that. And our repair cafe is in an area where there is no cafe, there's nothing, it's new build area. So I hadn't realised what a resource it was going to be for the area. Having had my wonderful carbon literacy training with you and Brendan, I'm wondering now what percentage of councillors and officers are trained in carbon literacy. Beyond carbon literacy training, how is climate responsibility embedded into induction, performance management, or everyday decision-making for staff and members? It's a bit like what Mike was saying earlier. Is there anything in the Constitution that would encourage more carbon-friendly behaviour? I know we can't make big inroads to this whole figure ourselves, but we can help spread the word, and the more it's embedded in us, the more we can help other people. I wondered, is there any reporting on councillor and officer travel emissions, for example, through mileage claims or fleet use? This would encourage people to car share more if we got published figures. Thank you.
Right, so you might have to remind me part of your question. But okay, so I'm going first. So in total, in the 4.5 years I've been here, we've run quite a bit of carbon literacy training. I've trained some, we've also had external trainers in. I think in total we've trained 118 people, but people move and leave. So it's an ongoing thing. So that we've done through carbon literacy training. We did a big sweep a few years ago and we got lots of lovely people, 68 people I think at the time, did various forms of, and that was senior managers, councillors, leadership, that was fantastic. We've got lots of people to do that. And then we've run our own. So it was really important for us to have this resource in-house so that we don't have to go out to external people. So we are part of the induction training now. So at one point, you could have joined the council and not known we declared a climate emergency, but now that is, we have a slot at every bit of induction training. In fact, I'm doing some next week. So induction training is that. I've also, over the years, we've tried lots of things, and so I've done bespoke training with teams. We used to do like a drop-in session every week. I'd pose a question about maybe something that was in the news, and we'd have a 30-minute session where you could drop in on Teams, and you could have it was Skype back then, and you could talk about, I don't know, flooding or something that we'd seen. We've done lots of stuff around things like all the COP events. We used to do newsletters, updating people like that. And we've got some of the things that we're looking to do. So with our fleet, we do capture that every year. So for grey travels, if you do it in your own car, so we capture that data in our carbon footprint, and we have seen a reduction in that. And one of the biggest things we ever did was the Work Smart arrangement. Now people don't need to drive in every single day. We did a little bit of work in the beginning when I first started, and I estimated it reduced our carbon footprint from commuting by 66%, but it is less than 1% of our overall footprint, so it's tiny, but every little helps. And we're just about to do some work actually. We've got a green travel plan, and we're just about to update all the information we have on our website, just to support any staff that do want to cycle in or do any of those things, take public transport. I've got a feeling there was something else that I've missed.
Thank you. Can I chip in? Can I chip in, Chair?
Yes, of course.
Yes, of course. No. So looking ahead and then looking at my role here, I'm to put a structure over all project work in the council. So there's really good work going on in lots of different areas, but we can't say there's consistency in how they're managed. Now, with the climate change function coming to me, that means that our project management office can make sure all these projects consider climate impacts as part of that early decision making. So it's embedded in every project essentially as part of that. And the expert is here, will be providing the tools for the project managers across the council to use that. So it will, once I get my work done, it'll be embedded in everything that we do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Judy.
Could I ask you two technical questions? Does rainwater harvesting fit into our climate change efforts? And you were talking about removing waste from landfill, recycling better, and I think there was a figure of 35 tons that we've saved in carbon emissions. The incinerator produces carbon. So is the incinerator emission included in the chart that we've got here?
The energy from waste plant, so we're the waste collection authority. Devon County Council are the waste disposal authority, so they deal with that. And energy from waste is better than landfill. Not hugely, unless you're capturing the waste heat, which is the reason why the energy from waste plant was purposefully built relatively small compared to the area, so that it wouldn't impact and hamper our recycling rates. And obviously East Devon, we are one of the top recyclers in the country, normally somewhere between second and 10th. I think we're about 6 at the moment. So with a recycling rate of 61.5%, which is fantastic. So we're doing really great work there. Rainwater recycling. So rainwater recycling's good, and I know that some of the Exmouth Town Council has done a project, and they collect it. They put water butts around the place that Exmouth and Bloom are able to use. It's quite tricky to get them installed. I've had some challenges trying to work with teams to do that. Apparently they're a fire risk. It's how we do that and do it in a way so that it doesn't provide a challenge for people. But absolutely rainwater cycling, all love that. So,
Kevin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Observations, really. It's we're 5 years into this. We have about 14 years left to achieve carbon net zero. And the problem we have, I suggest, 5% reduction last 12 months is very good, but it's a game of diminishing returns. The longer you go on, each extra 1% becomes harder and harder to achieve and becomes more and more expensive. Now, one of the things that I was pleased to see was the efforts with regard to carbon capture and particularly tree planting. I take on board certainly what Councillor Jeff Young had to say about seagrass planting and trying to get some more of that, because that is excellent stuff. We need a lot more of that offshore as well as in the estuary, and hopefully that'll happen. But what we can do is, I think, to redouble our efforts on tree planting. We have quite a lot of land within the East Devon estate that we can get some more planting done. And of course, as the trees grow, they sort of look after themselves and look after the increasing amounts of carbon being captured as time goes by. And I know this can be done because if you've got one small town in East Devon, through its town council, that can actually plant more than 3,000 trees in one season, done by council staff, a few of, but mostly volunteers, then most certainly we can be doing more than 3,000 a year, I feel. And there are other benefits to that, of course. It's not just carbon capture, it's also preventing flooding, it's capturing water in place, and hopefully we can also get a few beavers out there, and that'll help even further. It's also aesthetically very pleasing. So for me, I would like to see a big effort put on getting a lot more tree planting done. I think it is one way, an effective way, of dealing with the carbon that is going to be still produced in quite big chunks.
Before, Richard, did you want to comment on that before I go?
Just briefly, if you don't mind, sorry to come in again. Just to mention the Tree Champion scheme that's been launched. That looks at finding people who are interested in doing that local area and helping that process. So there's a route already in existence, which, if there's interest in, follow that one up, because that's a possibility. I think maybe our own land that we've got isn't the prize. It's the ability to bring in other areas that other people have got. And Jeff's just whispered near and reminded me, but I do work with other organisations, and some of the scale of some of the tree plants going on East Devon is truly astounding. And the Killerton estate, Jeff said 1 million. I think it's 700,000.
It will be 1 million.
It will be 1 million in the end. So a million trees going in. So it's about what we can do to help work with partners who are doing that kind of thing. And those larger projects that are happening are going to get to that point of getting that increase in overall tree canopy that we're looking for. It's in the tree, hedgeland and wood. Thors. I got Thors. Yeah. Strategy. Thank you.
Catherine, on that? Or are you happy with that answer? Yeah. Ian.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Blake said a lot of it. 1,300 tonnes we've saved. We've got 25,000 tonnes to go. We got, at our rate, there's 20 years, and it gets harder and harder. So, realistically, is it even possible? And can we afford it? Should we be now starting to use, like the trees, things that we can actually save that people need now? Flooding is a big issue at the moment. We need to slow the rivers down. Beavers were joked about, but they play an important part, or could play an important part. But certainly hedges in fields that slow the feed into the rivers, so the rivers don't rise up so quickly and then drop down, slowing the flow, which is what they're trying to do in Sibeth. Although we say we've planted 14,000 trees, at a cost of about 1,500 quid, I will quickly add, not £25,000 for 3,000 trees. a lot of them are hedges, so they don't ever get to be full-size trees. But what they're doing is slowing water down. And hedges are just as important for biodiversity as the rest of it, which creates corridors, etc. And again, you know, we should be working with these groups rather than trying to do it ourselves. I just think we don't like working. Well, no, we do, but we don't. It's almost like we've got to do it because we're proud of what we're proud of, whatever. But we need to just go out to these things. Just give the trees to the people so they can get on with it. So that's the first point. I recommended it a year ago to get to councillors, to get people more interested in carbon literacy, etc., to the predecessor in charge of the portfolio of this, that we use the portfolio group where you can get councillors in, not just one person having these ideas, but get other people in with different ideas so you can have blue sky thinking of what can be done, how can we do it, and educate. It's all to do with education, and again, balance, whatever, but education and not keeping it in one place. You know, I imagine that the people in that department spend more time trying to work out what our carbon footprint is and then actually going out and doing it. Does it make a lot of difference if we know exactly what we're at to the ton, to the 500 tons, whatever? You know, what we should be doing is just educating people that they need to, like with the carbon literacy training, what makes a difference. And it will get harder and harder. I think we just need to be concentrating more now on the things that are happening to us because of climate change, like housing. We're not going to be doing, they say 60 houses sounds great, but that ain't going to happen because we haven't got any money in HRB. And HRB has got its own problems of trying to cut back all the time. So, you know, just because we say 120 houses is going to be done this year, that isn't going to happen. Because HRB has got to cut back and it's doing repairs that are doing it. It gets better, yes, but why are we wasting time just trying to measure these little bits and pieces? We need to be just doing action that's going to help. And flooding is definitely a thing that would help with the carbon thing at the same time. That's about all I've got to say. I could go on for ages.
I know Jeff wants to come, but I'm going to just come in before Jeff. With your regard of getting more people involved, and you mentioned the portfolio group, I just think with the new climate change strategy, when that's agreed, that's a great opportunity to say, right, how are we going to work with councillors? What can they do and what can we achieve together? Because you're absolutely right, Ian. We can do it all individually, but we need people to want to make a difference.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be happening in February and March. We're into February now. It hasn't been advertised yet, so I can't imagine. So that'll be March, maybe April. Again, just bringing up a portfolio group where people can sit around a table once a month, whatever, and come up with ideas. It might be, they might not come up with any, but they might come up with one or two that might make a difference.
Okay, point. Look, I'm going to either have Jeff, but be very quick because
very quick. I'm really glad we've gone from now to climate change rather than global warming. If you look outside, there's a lot of rain. We do work on river catchments. We work with loads of groups of people that are doing upper catchment works to slow the flows down above the villages, speed the rivers through the towns, and on the coast, as you know, we're doing a lot of work to save our coastlines. So there is work on doing carbon capture and stuff like that, but the main work that we're doing is to offset what global warming is actually doing to our climate.
Very quickly then, Richard, and I'm going to give back to Catherine.
I was just going to go on Councillor Barlow's point of getting people involved. I think there's loads of opportunities. If you just get out there and look, there's so many opportunities. And I think the idea that there's people sitting in our council, sitting around and talking about it and not doing it, that seems rather odd. Most of the things are outward facing, and we've just talked about supporting other community groups and even hierarchies who looking after community groups who do activities out there that do get things done. And I've got a list of things from the countryside team. I think which is attached is our countryside team, and they manage 10 nature reserves. I mean, across the whole area. Talking of education, they do school visits. They do visits for community groups who come in. Seaton Wetlands was mentioned earlier was the jewel in the crown, but that's 326, most of who spend their time at Seaton Wetlands, volunteers who engage with massive amounts of time in all sorts of these things that we're doing, which think about all of these things. So the ideas are all out there as well. But I'd welcome anything where councillors could feel they had more of an into those. But I'd say get out there in the community because it's all out there.
Thank you. And I'm going to ask.
Thank you.
I'd just like you to try to answer Ian's first question about can we get to net zero in terms of how much more tonnes we've got to save?
So according to our descent plan that was run by Exeter University, the answer is no by 2040, taking into account all the actions that the government have highlighted. So that's adoption of air source heat pumps and low carbon heating. That's things like EV adoption, decarbonising of the grid, that kind of thing. We are still likely to be 7,500 tonnes of carbon. And that's if everything goes according to scale. Now, the descent plan is always designed to be a live document that will be run year on year, every few years, so we can check our progress against this theoretical line. And we know we're going to need to plant. We also know from a biodiversity point of view, we're one of the most nature depleted countries in Europe. We know we need to build more trees. We know it's going to have a huge impact on flooding. We know, and land stabilisation, we know we need to do this. So, like Ian, massive fan of hedges, love a hedge. And anyone who's done my training will tell you the first 50%, everyone says, oh, this is so hard. You wait till we get to the second 50% of reducing our carbon footprint. Now, that's going to seem hard. It's like when you're on a diet, those last few pounds, they don't want to come off. So, also, Ian's also really right about the thing about adaptation. That's kind of like the flip side of mitigation, and I don't think that we often there's enough attention paid there. And I think that's something that we are hoping to address through our new strategy. And we have absolutely had adaptation plans, and some teams are doing amazing work on it. But it's just something I want to kind of give a bit more of a spotlight to going forwards.
Thank you. Vicky, and hopefully that will be the last.
Thank
Then
you.
Ollie again.
Thank you for a great report with lots of information in it. My concerns are that it needs to be across the district council full stop. We're talking about planting all of these trees, etc., which I'm 100% for, including planting hedges. However, we have developers and landowners taking out trees and hedges. Nothing's done about it. We, as the planning authority, can enforce that those are put back in. I don't think I've ever seen it happen. And, if you've got a hedgerow that's been there for a long time, it should be enforced to be put back in. The same as trees over a certain size should be. The landowner, developer, whoever it is who takes it down, it should be enforced that they're put back. Obviously, they can't put back in the same tree. I'm not completely naive. However, the point is, we plant small trees, fantastic, but they have to take a long time to grow to get to a size where they're going to replace the trees that we're trying to replace them with, if that makes sense. But this needs to be across the board. It needs to be across the district council full stop. Enforcement needs to do their job in the respect of that they can legally. I'm not having a pop at anyone in particular. But we all know of developers that take out hedges, large trees, etc. And since I've been on the council, I've never seen it being enforced and anything being enforced to put those back in. That has to stop. And I noticed in the report with regards to flooding, etc., under the planning, we all know as local councillors that there's areas that have been put forward for the local plan that the knock-on effect for flooding is going to be quite large. Roy made a point earlier about building on agricultural fields. I'm with Roy. I don't understand why we're building on agricultural fields when there are other areas we can build on. And all I'm trying to say is you're doing fantastic work, but it needs to go across the entire council altogether so that each area of the council abides by the same bit that you're doing. Because otherwise we're doing our bit, you're doing your bit, and it kind of falls a little bit by the wayside. I understand that a lot of it comes from central government with the stipulations that they put in place, but we have to try and do something. Thank you.
Matt, did you want to comment on that? It's a difficult one.
To be honest, it's quite difficult for me to comment on that one, other than to say we can feed back to planning colleagues around it, and certainly within the action plan, there's a reference to the sort of the nascent strategy and the local plan that's coming through. It's quite high level in there, and to an extent, from our point of view, that's all we can report back on. So I'm happy to feed that back, though, to Ed.
Thank you.
Very quick. Ottery was hit by the floods last week, as everybody's aware. A few of the houses in Ottery that were hit were ones that were built not that long ago on what was always known as Ottery as a floodplain. And they got hit, but they got planning permission. And that's all I have to say.
Jeff, is it half a minute I'll give you?
Yeah, all new developments have to follow regulations with what they call SUDs, sustainable alternative.
Urban drainage systems.
Yeah, yeah. And now, so in theory, none of them should flood. But yeah, in theory, that's how we have to follow the local plan.
Thank you. Ollie.
Thank you. Well, a lot of hair's set running there, and I'm not going to try and chase after all of them. I just want to answer Ian, we can't just offset business as usual by planting trees, unfortunately. We need to do both. We've got to be reducing our own emissions and planting trees so that we're offsetting the emissions that, as you and Kevin have rightly pointed out, are going to get harder and harder to cut. But absolutely, we need to quantify that reduction, even if it's a blunt instrument. We need to be able to see that we're going somewhere. And I just want to say, East Devon does work with community groups. I've been involved in Exmouth with a group planting tiny forests. We've planted 2 now, 600 trees each time, with the help of East Devon District Council. Absolutely fantastic help from Paul Feely, who was here earlier. It absolutely would not have happened without the support of the council, on council land, and having the permissions and the support from Paul and his team made all the difference. So we do work with community groups. I'm sure we could get better at it, but you know, I think it almost needs those groups to say, what if the council can help us with this, and actually come and help. And then one last thing I'd say, one way that council can support community groups is actually with things like governance, because the tiny forests, rather unwisely, decided to make ourselves into a CIC, as a result of which we're all directors and we're just going through the painful process of all verifying our identity at the moment on the government website. Oh, I see Anne's been through the process. I've managed to do it. My wife started doing it last night and the website crashed. So, or her phone did or something. That's one way actually we could provide support for community groups is thinking about how we can actually support them with things like governance and how you constitute yourself in a sort of cost-effective and less hair-tearing way. But thank you,
Okay,
everybody.
thank you. Did you want to come in?
Yeah. Okay, stay on, or I'll hold it. I realise that Ian's in tearing hurry and wants things done straight away, but I thought he was a little bit dismissive of the fine work that's being put in producing these plans and saying, oh, we don't need to do the measurement, let's just get on and do it. The old adage is, you can't manage what you can't measure. If we haven't got decent measurements, we might have the best, or what sound like the best, intuitive ideas in the world. If we can't prove they're effective, then we might be leading ourselves up a tree or down a hedge or into a ditch or something like that. So I'd like to congratulate the officers on doing what they're doing, and we just need more of it. Thank you.
Richard, did you want one last comment? Then I'll sum up.
Chair, I feel it's slightly gratuitous, but there was the thing about planning and flooding, and I just want to say this week the government is consulting on, as it's been put in the press, watering down their protections for flooding in the national framework for planning. So it's a very frustrating situation where we're doing so much locally for all of these things. And watering down's been, but that's been in the news this week. So that would be disappointing if all of these things that we're doing to alleviate all the co-benefits of the things we're doing for carbon reduction, like reducing flooding through planting trees and hedges and fantastic stuff, and yet the government seems to want to change some of those to make it more likely there will be houses in floodplains.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for indulging me.
I'd like to
Thank you,
just
Chair.
sum up, if I may. First of all, I'd like to thank Caroline and Matt for the report, and your officers have obviously helped the report. Now, I would like to make a change to the recommendation, because I don't like the recommendation. I would like to say that the Scrutiny Committee compliment the service for their excellent work and progress being made in achieving the actions specified in the Climate Change Action Report. I'd like that as the recommendation in recognition for the work they're doing. It is really difficult, and we've heard tonight how difficult it is, but I think we ought to thank them, not just note it. And so I would like to propose that from the chair. And would you all vote on that, please? Right, thank you. Right, thank you very much indeed. Right, we are nearly there. Thank goodness, yes. Right, the item 10 then, pages 41 to 54, you've got the Cabinet Forward Plan, then you've got our Scrutiny Work Programme. The only comment I'd make at the moment, there's nothing in for April. Yes, Ian.
We asked Bacalong about, in fact, it was over a year ago now, about enforcement on planning, that we were going to look at this. And this is something that keeps coming up. My council, certainly Sidmouth Town Council, has put in, they have asked for information from the officer about what enforcement notices are outstanding in the town and what action is being taken. They have asked this letter 3 or 4 times now. They have still not even had the decency of a reply. And I do think that we need to look at this again, because we've been, I'm going to say fobbed off, but we were pushed into the long grass with, we'll have a look at that, we'll come back to you. And I don't know if anyone came back to us or not, but even if they have, nothing's changing. And I just think with planning especially, we've heard about it before, unless we have enforcement, what's the point of planning? Because you might as well just build what you want and not worry about it, because nothing happens. So I do think that we need to look at that as to what's happening.
Right, well, that was interesting because we haven't got anything in for April. Something may well come in. But as you know, pardon?
Sarah's saying there is something.
There is something coming in. Oh, yes. So what we could do in April, if you complete the form.
I've already completed it once, it's in there, so I don't need to do it again.
Right, well, I will sort it out, and we can then debate it properly, whether we actually do it. Because if you remember, when you first did it, if I remember rightly, we did a spotlight on it, but we've never done a scrutiny. And if it is timely to do that, let's bring that into the April meeting. Now, is it? No, but we can debate it though, can't we? We can debate, the issue, what we do is we debate whether we want to include it as a report going forward, don't we, first?
You can scope it.
Scope it, that's
Yeah,
the right word.
you can scope
Yeah.
it.
So we scope it then.
We try not to debate it
No, we don't.
without reports and without officers and to do it again, yeah.
Okay.
But you can scope it.
We can do it. Okay, well, thank you very much indeed. I'm sorry it's gone on so long, but Peter.
LGR consultation started today, and I, for one, would like us to have a discussion at a meeting that is not chaired by the leader or deputy leader. And I wonder whether overview and scrutiny or something might be able to sit down together and have a meeting so we can properly talk, where we're not having the LGA we can think for ourselves, because this was all just pushed at us, whether it's Devon County or District Council or whatever.
Andrew, I'm sorry to put you on the spot. What's your view of that?
Yeah, it's a fair point, absolutely. There will be an intense programme of work now. Obviously, first up to respond to the consultation that has has been highlighted, launched today. And then, to transition through to, as we know in July, the chosen option and what implementation looks at. And there's, a lot of work in there. Have had a discussion recently with Mel, Director of Governance, around, how, overview, for example, had a role in looking at that going forward. And absolutely, I think there's lots in there. There are some reports, I think Mid Devon have recently looked at this in terms of the role of their kind of overview and scrutiny functions, for example. And it makes sense, given we may be one of the same in the future, to look at that as well. So very happy to bring something through that,
But the point you're making, really, it is overview, not scrutiny, because it's going forward, isn't it? Yeah. Thank you, Peter. Well, with that, can I call an end to the meeting? Thank you very much for what was a very interesting, I'm sorry it was so long, but I think we've got a lot out of it. And thank you very much and have a pleasant journey home, or a safe journey home.